Hello and welcome to Matching Mom Jeans, where identical twins explore divergent paths of motherhood born from the same roots. Join us as we navigate this crazy world of parenting, proving that even with identical DNA, our journeys are still unique. Get ready for laughs, insights, and a double dose of maternal mayhem.
Howdy, howdy, howdy.
Hello and welcome to Matching Mom Jeans.
You look like you're half asleep, and I feel like I'm half asleep. So
Well, I
it's actually
I
nighttime there.
have been. It is nighttime here. It is 9:30 p.m. here.
See, I'm in the middle of the afternoon.
And
I have so many hours until bedtime.
that I do not. I'm not envious of you for, but I'm attending kindergarten now, so I'm
I love
extra
this.
tired all the
Extra
time.
tired. Kindergarten really wears you. They do say that when your kid starts like daycare or kindergarten, they'll just come home and crash for days on end because their bodies just aren't used to that level of just like pure energy use all the time.
Oh,
Um,
well, that's
and
why Germans
that,
do what they do,
I
so we
know
don't
they do.
stress the child.
We're gonna do an entire episode on that. We're gonna do an entire episode on that process because they like
Eingewöhnung.
baby step you into. I don't know what that word was. That's the word for it. But say it again.
Eingewöhnung?
Eingewöhnung. Something like that.
Wohnung.
Wohnung. I Eingewöhnung.
Yep.
Close.
If I'm
Very
saying it
close.
right, you're saying it close.
Um,
There's a big if there.
but yeah, so that's the process of essentially like when you get
It
into a
translates
cold
to,
pool and you slowly sink yourself down into the water.
yeah,
That's how you get into kindergarten.
exactly. It's
Just
that
slowly
translates
inch
to
your way into it.
settling in.
Oh, see, that's exactly what
And
happens when you get in a pool. You
all
just ease
children
yourself
who
in there.
attend Akita have to follow the Eingewöhnung, specifically, that's the Berliner method. So,
Mm.
like the method from Berlin. And the first 3 days, the parents go with them. So, you choose one parent. In this case, her mother was chosen. Um,
Were you chosen or were you voluntold?
um, the process of elimination resulted in me because I work part time.
Process of elimination. That's what I'm going to start saying. Instead of default parent, I'm just going to say process of elimination.
Yeah, exactly. We drew straws, and his straw was disqualified because he's got to be at work every day for a lot more
We
hours than
played
me.
rock, paper, scissors, and then my hand was crushed under a rock. A real rock.
We played rock, paper, scissors, but his hands were behind his back. Like, there's that. I was the only one with the hat and the ring there. But, I mean, really, it's been a very interesting experience. So, like, but it means that I attend with her, and it's not like I go with her the first day. It's not an orientation thing. The first 3 days, she and I go for an hour. That's where we are right now.
That's
We're
like
in the
library
first three
story
days.
time, and I'm already exhausted by library
It
story time.
is
I
like
can't.
library story. It's a lot
It's
like library
awful.
story time. It's a lot like library story time, but they don't speak the same language as us.
I was about to say that, except you're surrounded by people who don't speak
And they're
English.
like brushing their teeth and stuff. So not quite library story time. But then the next 3 days, you go for 2 hours. And then you start the process of you're there and someone like calls you out of the room for a little bit so they can see how she does. And
Oh.
um, then you're just sitting in the hallway
I
outside the
basically
kindergarten classroom.
I basically did that with my child. When he was like 6 months old, I was like, how far away can I get? And then I'd figure out his proximity boundary and then I'd slowly ease further away.
Kind of like that. Kind of like that. And then
I like that
apparently
it's
the
between
biggest
everyone.
hurdle, and I think this will be true for us, we'll report back. Let's not record that episode until we have like some positive results, because I
Oh yeah. No, we're
apparently the
gonna
biggest hurdle is nap time, because if
Ooh.
they struggle sleeping, it's not like you get a kid back who doesn't have a nap, because sleep is vital to their brain development. So I can't leave until she naps.
Oh, I would never pass the introduction zone.
We
Never.
would be settling in for the next 4 years.
We would be,
No,
I
so
would
you can
just move
I
in.
can, like, leave her in the morning, like, we may get to a point where I can leave her in the morning, but I have to come back and collect her after her nap time if she's not napping. However, I am going to, put a lot of faith in my child's hands here and just go ahead and say, "She's very bright, she's very clever, she responds well to bribes.
She
We
responds
can
well.
probably find a solution here."
Yep. Yep. And we will let you do whatever you want if you will just go to sleep.
Well, I mean, we got a couple aces in the hole, okay? First of all, where she currently goes to daycare, they don't let her have a passy.
Ooh. Ooh.
Oh, oh, oh. She
Hey.
naps there without a passy.
There
Let's just see how it goes, you know?
you
Let's
go.
go. Option two, we know a couple of these kids. We got this figured out. Like, I'm gonna be there. This is already better than her learning to nap at her current daycare because they just like
They just take them.
peeled her off of me for 3
Yep.
weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks.
Goodbye.
So, maybe this
Well,
I
I
choose
think
to believe that the entire country doesn't follow an inconvenient system just because they want to follow it. Like, I choose to
no,
believe it
it's a good
because
method. I
it
looked it up.
works for someone.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of effort, but first of all, I learned that German parents, like, not only do they have their, like, regular parental leave, but then they have which is a year, but they have a year starting when their child turns 3 to use between 3 and 8 to help with
Oh.
school breaks and settling in periods and blah, blah, blah. And so I'm like,
Wow.
no wonder. It's my perspective really that's the problem. It has nothing to do with the fact that this could take an entire month
The
during
American
one
is
of
the
my busiest seasons
problem.
of work. It's the fact that my American brain, my American
That's
brain.
so interesting. That's so
Really, it's not
interesting.
even the time because I'm actually really enjoying it and like I'm learning a lot of German and I'm getting to practice my German
A lot
and
of
like
German nursery rhymes.
I am learning a lot of. Hey, I learned all the German months of the year, okay? Because we started May, so we had to practice our months of the year, and I learned them all. And it only took me 1 day, 1 hour, learned all
Hey,
the months.
you do learn more easily through song. That was what my
Exactly.
college thesis was on.
Well, and the main teacher who I'm communicating with doesn't speak any English. There's always an adult in her room that does speak English, but her like primary teacher who makes all the decisions, like whether or not we can move on to the next phase of
The captain of the ship.
the stuff, um, she doesn't speak any
Oh, that's
English.
exciting.
So, for example, I can ask her to repeat something more slowly. And I'm
What
getting
a
a lot of
question.
practice with that
How
face.
slow can you say this, ma'am? And do you want to slip me some English while you do it?
Do you want to repeat it slowly enough that you wave down somebody who might know some English? Because that would be great.
That's like me when I was like renewing my like proficiency with Spanish after taking like a couple years off of not really using it. And I'd be like, "Can you write that down?" Like I can read it, but you're
Right?
speaking really quickly. Well, I think it's really funny that you're kind of talking about like adjusting and like nap times and everything because we let my son open his birthday gift from you early and it has
Oh, yeah.
radically changed our entire life.
I'm
You
telling
got
you.
us, it's not really truly like a hatch, but that's what those are like the name brand ones, right? Where it's like got an egg and it's got colors and it
It's an okay to wake alarm is what it's called.
okay to wake
Okay to
alarm.
wake
Well,
alarm.
so it's really amazing because it turns red when I set it to, which I set it to turn red at 8:30. Because at 8 o'clock we start getting ready for bed and I have War of the Worlds trying to get him to brush his teeth and but then the minute it turns red, I'm like, oh, we were already supposed to be in bed when it turned red. And then he knows he's late. And so then last night, for the first time ever, he took a little bit of a nap yesterday and he doesn't nap. He should be napping. He's only about to be 3, but he hasn't napped in like 9 months because he just doesn't. He's just not that kid. And it's horrible. But he took a nap yesterday and it was only like an hour and it was really early in the day. It was like from 1 to 2 or something like that. And so I thought, this isn't that big of a deal. I'm going to push bedtime back an hour, whatever. We ended up laying there for 3 hours.
Oh,
And
no.
yeah, we did a couple of resets. We got up and went to the bathroom. We got some water. We, shook the sillies out. We wrestled Wrestle Rabbit. We did everything. So finally, what worked was he said, I want to go downstairs. And that's the one thing we never do. We never go back downstairs. It's like the resets can be like in the bathroom and next to we do not go back to the living room. That's horrible.
Boundaries.
And it also breaks the facade of everyone else goes to bed at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, that's
And
true.
and so then we see like Big Brother's still awake, and that's a big problem. So we so he was like, I said, we can't, not until it turns green. And he walked over and tried to reach for it, and I was like, you can't fake it. It has to be green, and the little sun on there has to show up. And then you have to look out the window and make sure the sun is up outside too.
That's so funny.
Because previously, and you and I've talked a lot about this, like we started instituting like the concept of time and the concept of like, the sun is up, we can be awake. The sun is down and the moon is up. It's time to go to sleep. So like when the sun starts setting, he starts to understand, hey, it's getting on bedtime, dude. Like
Which doesn't work when you're as high in the hemisphere as I am, like as far north in the hemisphere as I am, because
yeah,
our
well, it's
sun,
not.
like the sun is setting like behind me right now at like
Yeah.
9:30 at
It's
night.
not super working for us right now either because the sun wakes up really, 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 really early. And
Yeah,
so
that's
at like
true.
6 o'clock, if he rolls over and happens to notice that it's light outside, we're screwed.
Ooh, nope.
It worked
Rouladen.
so well prior to daylight
German
saving time.
roulades are one of the greatest inventions
I
ever.
know. You need to bring those back with you, please.
I have told Jake that if he ever wants to build a house, he needs to prepare the budget for roulades
Yes. Yeah.
because I will be.
Because they just
I will
black
have them.
everything out, right? You just
Oh my
shut
gosh.
it down like
Yeah.
it's a Fort Knox.
Iron Man shades. Just straight up Iron Man
Iron
shades.
Man shades, that's perfect. So, anyways, but
But so it's
they were,
working.
yeah, it's
Even the
working.
unscheduled children can be somewhat benefited from schedule type A
Well,
tendencies.
and it also goes back to that, like, we moved to a visual calendar when both boys, I mean, like, when our older one was also like 3, and it had pictures on it, and it's like, here's the thing you're supposed to do when we sit down to eat. Here's the things you do when you go to the bathroom, and here's the order you do them in. And like a lot of these like visual tasks, because 1, they can't read words, and 2, if you're just demanding things arbitrarily, they think that you're making it up, and that invites power struggles. And so if some other omniscient being other than you, which is why I also created the scale of, I don't know if I've told you this, like the weather scale of if the boys can go outside and what they can
Yeah, I
wear.
think we talked about
And
that
it's like
like 1 or 2 episodes
above
ago.
45, you can go outside, but you have to wear long pants and long sleeve shirts. Above 65, or no, above 55, it's long pants and short sleeve shirt, but you have to have a jacket with you. Um, and then it's like above 65, you can wear shorts, but you have to have a jacket with you. And like then beyond that, like above 70, you can be in shorts and a t-shirt. And if it's not currently raining, you can be outside. But that's kind of our
That also
boundary.
doesn't work in our household because um, all of those different things that's not going to work because Germans dress for the season, not the weather.
Oh, that's fair.
So like they don't even get anything out that's
Oh,
like shorts or anything yet
interesting.
until summer. I literally got a announcement from the Kita um, today that is like we're preparing for the summer months. So we're going to start like wanting your children in looser clothing and in, swims, bring extra swimsuits and swim diapers and stuff like that, which
Wow.
is just like wild because I'm like, when? Because I mean, it was like 75 degrees last week.
When is
It's
summer?
now it's
Because
like it's 40 now.
are we waiting until solstice, guys? Because that's a long time from now.
Well, but yeah, it's like 40 degrees outside now, and so it's
Yeah.
like you go and they're all still wearing like long pants and long sleeves. Even my daughter is. They've retired the snowsuits at this point for the rain suits. But it's just different. It just
Well,
is.
what I like is that we have like Google that can answer things. And so now that we have a little bit more independence, like the boys can come and ask me, "Oh my goodness, can we go outside? It's 6:45 a.m." And I can be like, "Ask Google what the temperature is."
Well, yeah, it's kind of like
And
it's the
that helps a
mom
lot.
version of the mental load bearing wall. Like anything, because I mean, because honestly, like, yeah, those are your rules, but they're also kind of like society's rules.
Yeah. Like they're
Like, you
basic, and
didn't
that's
have to come
something.
up with that, and so you shouldn't be the governor of the weather and the
Well,
climate
and
and
that's
the closet.
I feel like that's a huge mental health component for, and that's kind of what we're talking about today, but that's a huge mental health component for moms is that not only are you raising your child and teaching them how to human, but there's a lot of expectations. Like for instance, this is a great example of this. We took our youngest to go get a haircut today with my husband. They get haircuts at the same time. They almost get the exact same haircut. My husband was starting to look too
That's
much like Patrick
adorable.
Mahomes, so it was time to go. Um, when it turns full
A
mohawk,
little
we're done.
fluffy, huh?
So it is a bit fluffy. Um, so when we were leaving the haircut place, um, this very sweet old lady, I mean old lady, like wanted to speak to my son. And I said, "Okay, would you like to give her a high five or wave and say bye, friend?" And he did. He waved and said bye, friend. Well, she was like, "I want to speak to him." And I was like, this is one of those moments where, like, as your mother, I want to just tell you, you can just run off and play and you don't have to do this. But as a member of society, I want you to understand that sometimes it's okay if mommy's standing right here for you to just let the nice lady tell you that she thinks you're a very good haircut getter child, because that's all she wanted to do. But she wanted to like say it directly to his face to like make sure he was listening. And like that's not something that we prioritize in our home, like necessarily. Like we will sometimes say like eyeballs, you need to look at my eyeballs while I'm saying this. But other times, it's like, hey buddy, you did a great job sitting still for your haircut, and that's all he needs. But at this point he was like, okay dad, let's go, we're all done with our haircuts. And this lady like wanted him to walk back across the room and like talk, and I had this moment
Come
of like,
here, Sonny.
yeah, exactly. And I had this moment of like kind of like disconnect, because for a second, a split second, I was embarrassed that my almost 3-year-old didn't want to come over and talk to some random old lady he's never met. And it's like, that's a wrong expectation to put on myself, much less my kid. Like, I knew that my kid was not being rude. My kid was being a kid. But I had a weird thing of like, I should have better prepared him for people like this, if that makes sense. And then I just kind of had to like shut it down and be like, no, because the chances of a random lady demanding to speak to him when all of the other, I mean, there were like 7 other old ladies there getting their hair done. And all of them were like, you did such a good job, buddy. And like high five or like thumbs up and high fives. And so he felt like a celebrity. And then there's this one lady like needed to be in his face. And I was just like, I have
Yeah,
not prepared him for that.
I think moms in general have like feel like the weight of all these expectations on like external expectations on like how their child should act, but you'll never be able to please everyone. Like there'll
Yes.
always be somebody who thinks your child is acting amazing or and there'll always be somebody who thinks your child should be acting better.
Yeah. Or differently. Because sometimes you'll even hear people be like, well, she doesn't let that little girl do anything. You know, she just sits there like a little doll. And it's like, well, she's being quiet and polite, but that's normally what you want. But now you're mad because she's not running around like a crazy like, you know, like
Yeah.
it's, you know, it's this, it really just feels like a damned if you do, damned if you don't. And I think
We
that's one
get
reason that I like having like other mom friends, because sometimes you need to look at another mom and be like, hi, you have a kid about the same age. Is mine okay? Like, what level of
right.
deranged are we okay with being in public with? And like I
That's
have
so funny.
started, I love to talk to my friends, and we're going to talk a little bit about Marco Polo, because that's another thing that I like to do. But like sometimes I'll take a video of like my son doing something and be like, question, I find this cute and funny. Would it bother you if you were also sitting here next to me? Because like I feel like that's an important question. And like the other day I took my son and my friend and her son, we all went to Sam's together. And our kids acted the exact same way they always act, and we were in public, and at the end of it, we both looked at each other and we were like, "Hey, our kids were like decently good." Like we were very proud of ourselves because like, yeah, were they loud? Yes. Did they have a couple of moments of like, don't touch me, you're touching me, because Sam's has those double carts. And so they
Right.
were in the same car. We did split up into separate carts at one point. We were like, stop touching each other. But like overall, it was okay. And we just kind of looked at each other and we were like, this feels like an excellent litmus test for like how we are navigating going into the world with our children. So I don't know. I, you sometimes need that feedback. I feel like you really do. And it needs to be like real, not like Instagram, if that makes sense.
Fair. Fair. Yeah, I could see that. The negative feedback I tend to get is my child is not in a stroller.
She walks too much. Your child walks too much.
Literally. Literally.
Who is that?
Because
Is that a
that's
German
just
societal
that's just
thing?
like a very European thing for your child to stay in the stroller.
Oh.
Like restrained, like especially at a thing like a farmer's market or whatever. And so for my child to be like free and running amok is she's not even running amok. She's like walking between me and her father. But
Do you think
you
it
know,
comes from a place of like safety concerns? Like, oh, well, it's easier if all the children are contained. Or do you think it comes from a like pleasantness of like children should be seen and not heard?
I honestly don't think it's either. I think that um, German parents walk a lot with their children
Oh,
and they just set
little
the
people.
standard from the beginning that they stay in their stroller when they're like walking and moving and going like in travel and transport. And so to have a child that doesn't want to spend all their time in the stroller is adverse to that.
Yeah, we would be screwed because I don't think we've used a stroller since like, I mean, I can hardly count on
We
one
used
hand the
one,
number of times we've used a stroller.
but I almost get judged more for pushing an empty stroller while she walks for a little bit than I do if I don't have a stroller with
Oh,
me. If I
100%.
don't have a stroller with me, people are like, "Oh my gosh, did you have to pick her up early from Kita for some reason? Like, why are you not prepared?"
What's wrong with you? I think
Literally.
that's really fascinating. And I get it, but I also like want to challenge them and be like, but I've seen my niece, and she's a little bit of a athletic beast, honestly. So
I mean, she
like
can do all the walk-ins, so
she does all the hiking and all the walk-ins and all the climbings and all the handstands and all the flips. Like, you know, like I just feel like maybe she's like, you weaklings, I can walk as far as I need to.
and she can walk quite far. But also you have to remember that like if their child does go to like a Kita, then until they're 6 years old, they're spending, 3/4 of their day outside actively running and playing. So they
That is
don't
true.
see that as like that's running an errand. That's
Yeah.
not the same as this is like an
Running for
adventure for your
fun.
child. This
Yeah.
is the family needs
Recreation.
something, so I've gone to the market to get it. Why would you think you were going to get out? This is not fun time for you. This is time for
So what I'm
us to do
hearing
stuff.
is that outside in Germany, strollers are kind of like I feel about shopping carts, which is a shopping cart in a grocery store is
Yeah, it's
as
kind of
close to
like
required as I would like it to be. Like, if my child is refusing the shopping cart for some reason, I am more likely to put my stuff down and leave.
literally
Because, like, you
same.
can't keep track of them, like, then they're crying and
They're gonna
whining, then
get
they're
run
wanting to put
over.
random things inside that, like so I do see that from, like and I would argue that there's a little bit of a societal expectation of, like, "Hey, if you have a really small child, you're gonna put them in
Right,
the
like
shopping cart. You're not gonna carry them with you or drag, like, a newly walking toddler through the store," like so I see that now, I see that perspective because we do kind of do that, which just not as widely insisted upon, kind of encouraged, whatever the term would be.
yeah. And you also have to kinda think about, like, we live in a city, like, a metropolitan area, so, like, even, like, the squares and the, plats and the, like, walking paths and stuff are highly trafficked areas, bikes and, cars and other people with strollers and
That's
people walking
valid.
about their business and stuff, and so you do kind of want to, like, not
Yeah.
be
I
chaotic
think
because I have
we
never once been judged taking her down there on, like, a Friday morning when it's chill and there's nobody
oh,
there
so
and
it's like
she
the
just wants
busy
to catch all
days.
the birds.
See, I
Like,
will
then
say
I've
that
got people approaching me telling me I have a beautiful, joyful child. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's and it's like a but if it's
it's the
like
busy
if it's
days.
at a market,
Efficiency.
if we're walking trying to go get the mail or whatever, and they're like, "Why is your child not restrained?" Like, "Hurry up, get your test done. Let's do this." Like, so it's
Interesting.
different. It
That is
is.
super interesting. I I feel like I don't know. I really wish that our youngest was a lot more like his older brother in the phase of like he understood the usefulness of the stroller. Like he didn't see it
Right.
as a restraint, he saw it as a throne that we pushed him around on. And like that would have been really convenient because I do think that like I feel safer. Like if we were out like at I'll never forget like the first like 4th of July parade or no the second because my son was born in May. But like his when he was like 1, I took him to like a 4th of July parade and I was like, there are so many people here that I do not want you to attempt walking. I don't want anyone holding you. I want you to be strapped in, please. Because I also have postpartum anxiety. Also, I have a question for you.
Right.
Because we're talking about May and it's Maternal Mental Health Month and it's Mother's Day coming up and all of that. Do you actually think that postpartum anxiety ever goes away? And I'm not asking that as like someone who studies psychology because I really don't want to look it up. I'm gonna be honest. I have always
I
wondered
mean,
if it just morphs into like because I was speaking with my doctor about it because I did go on medicine and we were just kind of doing like a check-in and I was like, "Hey, you know like he's almost 3. Like am I still having like true postpartum my body created a baby?" Which even that's not true because you can have postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety in adoptive parents too. And so I'm just like are we slapping a postpartum on something that's just, hey, you have anxiety now because you have a small person who depends on you?
right?
like,
Like,
like at what point do we
I
draw the line and be like, well, actually, having a human that you're in charge of is just kind of hard, and you're having a little bit of anxiety about that? Is it
I
still hormonal?
definitely do not feel as though I still have postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety symptoms 2.5
Oh, so
years
maybe I
later.
just have regular anxiety.
You could just have regular anxiety. I mean, it could be postpartum, but
Well, I
I
just couldn't figure
definitely
out, like, I heard someone the other day, and of course this was anecdotal, but she was like, "Oh yeah, like I feel like I was still having all of the same issues that I never had before my pregnancy when my son was like 4." And I was like, "But again, like you'd never had children and then you had children and you had anxiety about the children. Is that truly what we're talking about when we're talking about like the
well,
chemistry of like depression and anxiety, or are you just experiencing the anxiety of life change? Do you get what I'm saying? Like the two differences?
yeah. And I guess I mean, I my life is drastically I definitely was an anxious person before I had my
Understatement of the
daughter.
year.
Excuse me. Rude.
Shh, I won't tell anyone.
Rude. I'll tell everyone that you're rude. That's rude.
I'm rude. I'm rude. I accept it.
No, so, I was an anxious person, but I had never been depressed. And, I think that a lot of my unmanaged anxiety, both before I had a very difficult pregnancy and a traumatic birth, and then a severe amount of grief, losing two very important family members to me, helped shove me right off that cliff into postpartum depression.
Valid.
Hormones probably helped too, but it was set up from the get go,
Yeah.
just perfect
See, and I
tea.
went the
So,
opposite way because I
but
was
because of that, like, I also look at there's way bigger differences between the life that I was living before I got pregnant and the life that I have now that
yeah.
have nothing to do with being a mother.
Yeah, that's true. Well, see, and that's kind of see, I feel like I went the opposite direction. I experienced a lot of trauma and depression and frustration and yuck prior to my pregnancy. And then all of a sudden, I was having panic attacks. And I was like, what is this? Like, I used to react to stress by like getting under a blanket and like sitting in the dark for a few minutes and like soothing. And then all of a sudden, my
Eating
entire
soup.
brain was
You
on
ate so
fire.
much soup.
So much soup. Yeah.
You're
But
like, I
like,
just need some soup and I'll be okay. And I'm like, that's for stomach bugs.
yeah. But I mean, it's true. And like, I've spoken with one of my friends who has, like depression and like the big capital D, like diagnosis. Um, and like she said the same thing. She was like, "Yeah, I used to deal with stress by like laying in the fetal position or like getting in a warm shower or like all of these things to like, that I had kind of dealt with." And then much like me, she experienced something where she started having anxiety and hers was very chemical, but she'd just be like, and then all of a sudden none of that works because it's not slow and smooth that you need. You need something to ground you really quickly. So I think it's just interesting to me, and I just kind of wonder if like I won't ever swerve back into the nice slow sadness. I'll just always
I think
be a firecracker.
there's gonna have to be like a lot more research on the causes and the
Oh, there has to be.
facts, because for me, I, I don't I think that hormones played a part. Yes. Because there is a timeline in my head of when things got really bad for me and when things started to get better for me, and they line up with, all that you hear about, like, this is when the baby blues peaks, and if it doesn't go away by this point, then blah 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 blah, and
Yeah.
this is the blah 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 and all this stuff. But a lot of the, for lack of a better word, like, triggers for my postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, for with the exception of sundowners, which I didn't understand. I think that had to have been hormones.
I
Um,
I would one day love to just do a deep dive on like the random things they don't tell you about the middle of the night for the first 6 weeks of your kid's
was
life.
it was 5:30 p.m. 5:30 p.m. All of a
Oh,
sudden, everything
everyone's
was out to get us. I don't
yep.
know why,
It's
but
it's
anyway, like,
because you're used to being
there
attacked by
were
wolves,
specific.
anthropologically speaking. Your brain goes, "It's dark. My baby will be eaten by the night predators soon. Owls, wolves, bears. It's gonna be
Can
bad."
you imagine how much better it would have been if I would have had some Rolodins and I would have just been like, put it in lockdown mode.
Yep.
Um, you gotta just lock those steel shutters into place and we're all good. But so, like, if you if I break down, with the exception of those kinds of things which were obviously hormonal, um, but the grief, the trauma,
Yeah.
the like, even some of the anxiety were things that I could process, whereas like hormones and like things being out of whack, your body having lasting effects, those aren't things that you can like process through
Yeah.
with, like, hundreds of dollars of copays in therapy like I did. Because I
Yeah.
mean, I was in therapy for before I was pregnant, the entire time I was pregnant, for 2 years after she was born, I would be in therapy right now if I could find a therapist that spoke my language, or the other language was sufficient enough, but I can barely talk to 4-year-olds at Kita. So,
Yeah.
um, like, I processed a lot, but I also made a lot of life changes. And I don't think that is a I don't think I'm qualified to answer that question.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
and
because
I get
I don't think most
frustrated.
people would be equipped to.
Yeah, and I get frustrated sometimes, and I kind of laughingly ask, when does it end? But like I get a little frustrated sometimes when people say, postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression, and it is getting more information and more attention now. But also, if you look at the list of like the top 10 most stressful things to happen to you or that can happen to you, it's like moving, adding a family member, losing a family member, a sudden job change, starting a new job. Well, hello, parenting's a job, guys. You're starting a brand
Yeah.
new job with a new person in your life all together. It's like starting a new relationship, then moving in, and suddenly you're also, and then it's like, like caregiver expectations and caregiver stress. Like I think it's such an interesting. We want to sort things as a society. We want to sort things into a nice little box. And it's just so much more complicated than that. And it's so frustrating that even though we are making so much progress on maternal mental health, there's this whole extra component of it's a spider's web spaghetti knot. It's like when you get your jewelry all together and you can't figure out how to separate it. Like that's what needs to happen with maternal health, but also it doesn't matter because we need to just treat the symptoms and move forward. And I think that's so
There
frustrating.
is something to that. There is totally something to that. I think that one of the best pieces of advice that I was given by my therapist, um, in the weeks after my daughter was born, um, was that there were parts of your life pre having a child that were going to feel cut off.
Yeah.
And rather than trying to um, reconnect with those parts of your life, she was like, I'm not going to tell you to try to reconnect with those parts of your life before you had a child. I'm going
Yeah.
to tell you that if you can't build a usable bridge to get back to that part of your life, then it's in the past and you need to move forward. You need to expand
Yeah.
in other ways. You may not be able to, for example, like go to a weekly book club. However, you can still find joy in reading and
Watching TikToks
discovering
about
new
the book you
authors
read.
that you like. You what?
I said it, watching TikToks about the book you read, because that's my version of book club right now.
Or oh yeah, or like finding an online community, like, but that means that if you keep trying to fit whatever into your life and it doesn't work, that's not the same. And so like
Yeah.
I feel like how many people have just been told like, well, don't deny yourself. You're still more than a
Mm-hmm.
mother. Like if you're
And that's
struggling right now, you need to get back into what you were doing before. And I'm like, maybe.
the math don't be mathin'. You do not have enough hours in the day. And like that goes back to our conversation about like going back to work, and that whole episode is like sometimes you do not have enough hours in the day, and that's okay. You find what works for you and how you can kind of navigate that. But I sometimes wonder if it wouldn't be more helpful. I mean, I know it would be more helpful, but like when we teach critical
Spoiler alert.
thinking, you remember like in like middle school and high school, and they're like, critical thinking, you must use critical thinking.
Are
And
they
like,
teaching that in American schools
I
nowadays?
don't, I don't think they are, but also if we taught it in self-awareness, they would be a game changer. Because seriously, we ask parents, like one of the biggest things we ask parents when you're having a behavioral issue is like, well, is it happening at a certain time of day? Is it happening after a certain thing? Does your child have a food issue and they're having meltdowns after about an hour afterwards because they have a tummy ache. Is your child wetting the bed because they have enuresis, or because they are drinking 2 gallons of water right before bed? Like,
Did your
what's
child stop sleeping through the night because at 5 a.m. is the coldest time in your house if you have a automated thermostat
yeah,
and they're waking up? Because do you know how many people have said something along the lines of, yeah, my child hasn't slept later than 6 a.m. in the last 3 weeks? And I'm like, bump your thermostat up.
yeah,
Bump your
bump
thermostat
it
up
up
before
just a
you go
little
to
bit.
bed. Like, put a lighter blanket on your bed and bump it up because 5 a.m. is the coldest time in your house.
Yeah.
And then
Well,
all of a
and
sudden, those children are sleeping again. Like, but you know
we
what?
teach
That took me
parents.
weeks to
Yeah,
figure
but
out.
we teach parents, like, okay, consider your child's not disobeying you to be disrespectful. Are they hungry? Are they tired? Are they sick? And it's like, we should be turning that inward on ourselves. And I will say that, like, that's one of my favorite thing about the people that I work with a lot of times, as in like coworkers and people who have the same training as me, is we are kind of taught to do that to ourselves. And so you'll hear a sentence like, well, I believe that I'm experiencing a higher level of depression right now, but I also believe that that may be coming from the fact that I used to have contact with my best friend all of the time, and she was a big light in my life. And lately, she's been really busy, and I feel like I'm just really disconnected from the world. So I don't think it's a true, like, chemically, like, really dangerous depression. I think I'm just a little lonely, and I'm going to try to find another way to connect. And it's like, can you imagine if everyone thought that way?
Yeah,
Like, even around fears, like, one
that'd
of
be
the biggest
insane.
things, like, being a parent is so scary. It is so scary to be a parent. Like, not only, like, because you are in charge of raising an entire human and keeping them alive, but also because it someone that you love very dearly is very vulnerable. And
Yeah.
and you have to trust the individuals around you. Like, I almost wonder if, like, we talked about, like, you have to go to kindergarten with your daughter. I wanna do that. I wanna make sure
Right?
that everything that goes on at kindergarten is kosher. Like, I wanna meet all of the teachers and meet all of the kids and highlight who I think is gonna be the bullies in this room.
And
Like,
hear
I
what they say when the kids get too loud, because today I learned that they yell at, like, the whole class, like, get above their volume and to the whole class, and they'll do it twice, and then they start calling out names. And I
Ooh,
looked at my daughter and I was like, "You don't want them to ask a third time because they're gonna say your name."
exactly, like,
I'm, like, looking at my
FYI.
two-year-old conspiratorially, like, "Don't if you hear it the second time, that's when you just zip it drip, okay? Like, don't be on the list of names that she's rattling off." You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
but it helps your anxiety so much, but how impractical is that,
Yeah.
for us to, like, follow our children around everywhere, but at the same time, how could it sometimes be practical? Like,
Well, and that's something that I think is so frustrating too, because, like, yes, there are ways. There are unavoidable scary things in parenting. Like, one day your child is going to fall. Oh, hello. I have a story to tell you. Yesterday,
uh-oh.
both boys were together inside a hammock. The hammock was 2 feet off the ground. There was nothing dangerous about this situation, other than the fact that both of them were in the hammock at the same time. But since they are mostly inseparable, there was not a better option. Because if we had put one outside of the hammock and one inside the one inside the hammock would have been at risk of being pushed out of the hammock because the other one was trying to get in the hammock. So it's just better if you just accept it from the
Fair enough.
beginning.
I've put
But
my child in a hammock with the dog before, so I feel like this is fine.
well, but I mean, and they were 2 feet off the ground, 2 feet. And we were all right there. Like, we were at my in-laws. My husband had his eyes on the hammock. And still, and I was maybe an arm's length and a half away. Like, I had to take 2 steps when this happened. But the youngest one flipped out and landed on all fours on the, like, floor or on the ground. Okay, not that bad. But the momentum of falling out of a swinging hammock carried his face down into this one metal piece that was holding up the hammock. Like,
Oh,
the
no.
only metal piece. And we thought he broke his nose. Thankfully, I can report he's completely fine. He doesn't even have a black eye, and he just still has, like, a little swelling around his nose, which is astonishing considering how much blood there was.
Fluid,
But
snot in there or something. It's something.
yeah, it was something, man.
My
But like,
medical opinion means
but
nothing.
like, I had this moment where I braced myself for the anxiety to come. I braced myself for the shame and the guilt and the fear and oh my goodness, I need to hold you and make myself feel, and I none of it did because I was able to sit there for a second. And like even like my mother-in-law was like, you know, do we need to have done any, and I'm like, we did everything correct. Like there was nothing. We even told his brother, we were like, you didn't do anything wrong. Nothing really led to this other than gravity versus a clumsy child. Like,
Yeah.
to be honest, he falls all the time. But like I feel like having that ability to kind of dissect that for myself made a massive difference. And I mean, did I still have the adrenaline rush when you see your kid have blood on their face? Yes. Did I still have the frustration of like, oh, it feels like if I'd just been standing there like 2 minutes before that happened, because I had literally just walked away from breaking up a fight over who could pretend to be the captain of the pirate ship. Um, Spoiler alert, there are first mates and co-captains. You don't have to fight over who has to be the
Yeah, it
captain.
sounds like your
There
youngest
are
walked the plank, though. That's all I'm hearing here.
the captain boycotted him off the ship. But no, but I was sitting in bed last night and I kind of had like, the like just yuck of like I want to make sure that he's still doing well, and I checked on him several times last night and blah blah blah. But I had this moment of like really being proud of myself because with who I am as an anxious person, I think it would have been kind of on brand for me to panic and cancel all my plans for the rest of the day and like just go home and like sit on the couch and snuggle with my kid and like, oh my goodness,
Oh.
everything. And like, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I would argue that his dad kind of had that moment and he snuggled for like 2 hours watching Bluey. But,
Oh.
um, and he loved it because he got snuggles. But it was just one of those things where it was like, because I was able to think. And that's the difference. If you kind of have the chemicals and the hormones stabilized enough that you can think, then you can kind of figure out what you're afraid of. And for me, I was afraid of my child being hurt, but there was nothing I could have done. There was nothing. And
Well,
so,
and once he was hurt, there's nothing you can do either
and
except
once he's
for
hurt,
do
there's
what you can to
nothing I
ease
can do
it.
about it. And I mean, like ultimately he cried for like 5 minutes. I was more upset. I was upset longer than he was. I didn't cry, but I was like, he was like, okay, gotta go. Grandma's got apple juice. Bye. And I was like, I would like to look at your face a little bit longer. Your dad wants to wipe the blood off your face. And he was like, bye, gotta go. Like, and so it's
Yeah.
just one of those things where coming from a mental health perspective, like, we did it right. Like, we did it right. He has a secure attachment. He felt safe where he was. He got bonked, and we made sure there wasn't any life-threatening injury. And thankfully, my husband has a friend who's got a doctorate of something that's medical, and he at least came over and made sure there was no broken bones. Um,
Oh,
but
that's
like,
good.
but like, ultimately, from a mental health perspective, it was okay. And I just like, if I could wish anything for like Mother's Day for like every mom I know, it would be that. It would be that moment where you can realize it is terrifying to have my children out in the world and to not know what to expect and to have my family insert X about what's going on in the world. Um, but it's gonna be all right if I can reason myself through that. Does that make sense? I don't know if I said that right.
Yeah. No, it does. And it sounds like your mental health journey is like on its way up too, like because you had that capacity to think it through. So, I mean, I think there's just like a lot of different metrics out there and it is just such a journey.
Yeah.
Um, but it's also kind of about like what your tolerance is and
And what
like
your system
what
is too. Like if I'd been by myself, like I'm also a lot less anxious about the kids when myself and my husband are both present. If I'd been with myself and a bunch of other adults, I still probably wouldn't have felt as secure as I did, knowing that, like, hey, the other owner of this child is present and he also believes everything is okay.
See, but
So we're
that's
good.
coping. Like,
Yeah.
that's a coping mechanism, is to rely on the opinions of the other trusted opinions of someone that I almost said the other trusted opinions of someone you trust who gives their opinion.
I like
Wow.
that. That's it's getting on to bedtime, isn't it?
It's getting circular there. That's
You're
some
going.
circular discussion. But you know what I mean? Like that's a coping mechanism. And I would think that when they start to talk about people getting further out postpartum and we start to talk about maternal mental health and you start to talk about the big triggers and you start to talk about that stuff, but also you have had nearly 3 years to develop your coping skills.
Yeah. Well, and I
But you've
cheated
also
because
had 3 years with him to kind of learn how flexible his little nose is. You've had some
yes,
trial and error experiments. You have, for lack of a better like analogy, defined some of the boundaries of what's a big deal and what's not a big deal. And
yeah,
some of that comes with time. Like people talk about what we can do to help new mothers with their anxiety and new mothers with adjusting to their life. Time, the
hmm,
capacity to have time and trial and error and feel everything that they feel and ask the
yeah,
questions that they ask and splash around in the deep end without feeling like if they drown that's it.
yeah.
Like,
If you can move through the crisis and survive long enough, then you can move into the like living, into the thriving, into the like, like you have to get through the bad. And the question is, what are we doing to help the people as they navigate through the bad? And then we can start the skill building and the coping and the things like that, which I think is so, we don't always think of it that way. We think of it as an on-off switch, and that's not what it is. It's a
yeah, we
really
think of it as
large
this like
mountain.
we think of it as this like line that you're either above or below, like good mental
Yeah.
health or bad mental health. But really, you're going to constantly, I think realistically we live in unprecedented times. Um
Don't say that word.
oh
Oh
man, just
no.
shivers down your back. Doesn't it? Just
Mm.
shivers down your back.
I want to live
Um
in precedented times, please. Precedented.
there were never any precedented times. There were
Shh.
never any precedented times because before there was, you know,
Brand new
pandemic,
technology to
there
consider.
was brand new technology, there was um
Brand new car.
wars, there were, like
Yeah, that's true.
famine, there were crazy
Being
hurricanes, there were school
presented
shootings, there
is
were all
unprecedented.
of these things. So it's never been precedented. And even if there was a precedent, you would never have experienced because you weren't a mother then.
Ugh, that's some
So,
interesting
like,
logic. How did you go from
but
speaking in gibberish to slamming down the logic?
well, like, this the fact of the matter is that we live in a world where there's a lot to be anxious or overloaded, like, and the facts tell us that no matter what country you live in, no matter what age you are, no matter what generation you are, no matter how many children you have or how much money you make, your mental health could suffer no matter what, basically. You could be under a lot of stress. You're probably not getting enough sleep. You probably aren't eating exactly what you need to eat, even when you try. Like, you might need to be walking more. You might need to be walking less. I don't know what the current rules on that say, but the fact of the matter is they're probably going to change tomorrow anyway. But the
Yeah.
fact of the matter is that, like, life is stressful enough. And yet, when you really start to, like, break it down into bite-sized pieces, the same task remain.
Yeah.
You have people to take care of. You have to take care of yourself. There are mouths to feed. There's laundry to do. Like, when you zoom out, it's only going to get scarier. When you zoom too far in, it's only going to get scarier. You got to find that sweet spot, that balance. And that's why,
When it
like,
looks like
for
bite-sized
some
pieces. Yeah.
people, balancing their mental health is zooming in further. I zoomed in further because I had to get some of my long-term career goals out of my
Of your
immediate
brain.
focus
Yeah.
because I could not balance it all. And so I zoomed in
And
on my little family.
I have to exist in a zoomed out perspective and remember that like not everything that's happening right now is going to be in perpetuity. Like there are
Right.
ends to things that are going on. And I think that that
And I
happens
think
too.
you
It's
kind of have
fascinating.
to zoom in and out monthly, weekly, sometimes daily. Sometimes
Yeah.
and I just had this conversation with a couple of my mom friends where we have like a group Marco Polo, so lots of several of us can jump in all at once. And two of us were
That's
having
amazing.
like we were both there at the same time and we were having a conversation about just how precious this age is. Just how absolutely insane this age is and how ridiculous it is that I am, I'm 5 months into a new job and I'm already having to take quite a lot of PTO so that I can attend kindergarten with my 2-year old. And kindergarten's not even real kindergarten. It's not the same
Yeah.
thing as in the States.
It's not.
It's this whole different thing, and I'm having to learn this whole different thing, and I'm going with her, and it's just it's so crazy that I'm missing this much work for this. And she was just kind of like, yeah, but someone told me the other day something I won't forget. And I was like, well,
Oh
share
no,
the
is it one of
knowledge.
those things that
And,
makes people cry?
it is, it's one of those things she said, "Take advantage of this time because this is one of the few times in your child's life where they want you to be with them as much as you want to be with them."
Oh, that's real. That's real. That's very
And I
real.
was just like, "Ah, I'll find a new job if I have to." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, just like but at the same time, she chimed in later. Our other best friend was like having a conversation with someone at her job about how her and her husband just really need some time away and their child's
Yeah.
2 and literally never going to remember it if they take a weekend away and leave her with her grandparents who love her so much and
Exactly.
know her routine and but she
Yes.
will know it if her parents don't love each other right now. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they
Well, and that's
have
true. Like,
to they have to be humans and the mom has to feel good about herself and like they have to have those moments and so somehow this time is so precious and yet also if you zoom out
yeah, they're not gonna
it's
remember
just
it.
a weekend like
Yeah. The
so
attachment and the like foundation that you're building matters, but the like their cognitive processes, it's okay if you're gone for a second. They don't remember. My son will never remember falling out of the hammock. It's never gonna happen. For me,
exactly
core
it's
memory
so
instantly. For his brother, probably pretty important because he was a little freaked out. But like for my two almost 3-year-old, he's never gonna remember that. Ever.
and so for your mental health you have to either zoom in and cut some of that stuff out or zoom out to where it doesn't matter and you can see it in perspective
Yeah.
and I think that's like the biggest thing is just the time to figure that out.
Yeah. No, I like that. I like that a lot. Speaking of time, it is time for you to go to bed and time for me to ensure that my child has had some form of food for a snack.
Snack time.
I
I want
left
some
him
snack
3
time
different
before bed.
options out on the table, and his dad was supposed to help him navigate it, but it's never clear what's going to happen with snack time. It's, a, it's an exciting adventure. So,
My
you're a good mom. Happy Mother's Day. Almost.
yes, happy early Mother's Day to you
Do
as
they do
well.
okay? Is
You're a
Mother's
good mom.
Day is
Oh,
Mother's
oh,
Day
oh,
in
oh.
Germany?
Hear me about this. Hear me about
I
this.
just
This
realized.
Thursday, the day that this episode is releasing, is Fata Day,
Yep.
Father's Day, in it's spelled like Vader.
Yeah. Vada.
Feta. Feta
Veda.
Day. Um Feta. Feta? I don't know.
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know how to pronounce it. I'm really tired right now. It's 10:30 p.m. I'm so exhausted right now. Um, but so that's Father's Day in Germany on Thursday.
Right.
Mother's Day coincides with American Mother's Day, and then guess what? My husband gets American Father's Day in June too, so he gets 2 days this year, and I get 1.
Nope, time to co-op his day. Take the Thursday before his day.
Uh, take the Thursday before Mother's Day. That's
Mother's Day
Parents'
for
Day now. If you translate it to English enough times on Google Translate, it probably translates to just Parental Day or something. We'll just,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know,
Just
those
super
things where you
fun.
can just like, you just keep translating it back and forth, back
I
and
know.
forth, back and forth,
Yes.
back and forth until you get
It's a
something
lot of fun.
wild.
All right. You're a good
But
mom. Happy
you're a good
fake
mom.
Father's Day to your husband and happy real Mother's Day to you.
Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Have a good day. Bye. Or good night.